Thank you all so much for coming back to Continue Freedom. I truly, truly appreciate it. I'm very happy today because I've got somebody, I've got a guest who we've been trying to get together to do a podcast, to do a show for months now, and finally we're making it happen. So make sure that you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell. That way you're notified every time a new video is released. But I've got Osiris from My Crazy Opinions. This guy has been making the rounds for, really leading up to the election. It's been awesome. And, we were talking like briefly before the show that, it's cool for me to see folks, especially in very like deep blue areas, getting involved in local politics in Chicago, which is where you're from, right?
Born and raised.
Born and raised, and a young dude. I mean,
Born and raised.
you're in your 20s, right?
I just turned 27 last week, actually.
Okay. So I really do think this is a big deal because when you're involved in local politics in a place like Chicago, you're really on a much bigger stage than most other folks I'm in a small town, right? I'm in a town of like, it's like 40,000 people or something like that. So it's a very, very small town in East Tennessee, not a big, but we look at what's going on in places like Chicago, and I see you and the people that are part of Chicago Red that are getting really involved in flipping your city. So I'm going to play this clip first. This will be a great introduction to Osiris and what he's doing. But this is him giving Brandon Johnson what for in a city council meeting. It's a couple minutes, so let's watch this, and I'm going to get your take on this.
Our next speaker is Osiris King.
Go Red.
Go Red. Chicago Red. Good morning, Mayor Brandon Johnson. This is my first time seeing you in person. It's really cool and just not seeing it through the news. My name is Osiris. I'm a young 26-year-old man here in Chicago. And I remember when my elementary school in the area that I live in, the Wadsworth Elementary School, was turned into a migrant shelter. And I remember how Democrats talked to us like we were stupid. You need help. The immigrants need help. Y'all gotta work together. They live in poverty. This is something that you have to accept. And they talked to us like we were 5 years old. But y'all wanna talk about Republicans belittling black people and talking to them like they're stupid? I felt like I was 3 years old, like, okay, like I don't know where Venezuela is on a map. Half of the people who support these migrants probably couldn't point to Venezuela on a map, but a lot of folks are probably wondering, what is this young black kid or young black man doing wearing this hard hat in City Hall today? Well, let me tell you, growing up, my favorite show was Bob the Builder. He wore a very funny yellow hat. This hat is a symbol of Bob the Builder building the wall, building it tall around America, around Chicago. We don't want illegals in our community. We don't want migrants terrorizing our own people. And to have y'all sit up here and say, we have to accept $70 million being given to them when you got black people who are already struggling and need help, it is a disgrace. It is a disgrace. And this election of Donald Trump represents something that is just more than him winning. This is the end of vote blue no matter who. This is the end of they black, you gotta vote for them. This is the end of Democrats saying lesser than two evils. They did that with Hillary. They did that with Biden. They did that with Kamala. It didn't work this time. People are sick and tired because nowadays you gotta get your hands dirty. You gotta come down and talk to the people. You gotta give a little to get a little. Black people are not falling for the okie doke. A long time ago, y'all would say, black people jump. We say, how high? They say, stoop down. We say, how low? They say, go vote Democrat. We would run faster than you saying votes to get to the ballot box. But this is the end. And must I also say, people talk about Mayor Brandon Johnson, but he is just a microcosm of the problem in the Democrat Party. I want to talk to Democrats on a national stage. You got in New York City, Black Lives Matter being very upset, and that's fine, but also be very upset about what's going on in Chicago with these black people being terrorized by the migrants, the illegal immigrants, and no one can say anything about it. It's not fair. So at the end of the day, with the time I got left, I want people to think about who really has the power. Democrats think they have the power. Obama, who was an abomination to this entire nation, thinks he got the power. Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer
I like
and Nancy
that.
Pelosi think they got the power. They think they can bully us and we got to stand silent. But people in America everywhere know that we got the power. And we saw Donald Trump.
Thank you very much for your comment.
And then they cut your mic off. I hate that they do that, but man,
Yeah.
that was fiery, dude. That was great.
I'm happy that you liked it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
Well, it
fantastic.
was a very, at first I was kind of nervous because that was my first time actually like speaking to Mayor Brandon Johnson. I was, I've seen him on the news. Obviously, you see the drama, but to actually be there in person, it's a game changer. So I was happy to be there and to actually tell him, "You are a problem. The Democratic Party is a problem." I'm not gonna be shy about that. I'm not gonna treat you guys with kid gloves. So I always bring the fire when talking about politics. It's so much fun.
Well, you really did there. And like we were saying before, is that like this is when you're doing it in Chicago, a deep, deep blue area, but a very large city, a very influential city. Like that's really putting yourself on the national stage. And to speak your mind like that, it takes guts. And even in small towns like where I'm from, a lot of people don't want to stand up and say anything. But I guess that would lead me into my first question so people can get to know you a little bit better. But that's what got you motivated to devote yourself to this like movement to try to shift, because it's a lofty goal to shift Chicago into a Republican stronghold. Like what got you motivated to do it?
So, like most people in the Black community, I was sort of brainwashed into voting Democrat. I was 18 in 2016, and it was vote for Hillary Clinton. It was, vote for Biden. You have to vote Democrat because that's what you're supposed to do if you are in my community. But in 2023, with the migrant crisis, they turned the school in my area into a migrant shelter, the Wadsworth Elementary School. And that's kind of what I referenced in my little speech. And basically, they had these community meetings where you have to show up and you have the aldermen, people from city council, pro-immigrant groups all sit on a stage and lecture the local people about why they got to accept this school being turned into a migrant shelter. And we're just kind of sitting down like, wait, what's going on? And they're like, no, these people, they need help. They're from Venezuela. They live in poverty. And that's why this is going to be a shelter. So have a nice day. And it's like, this is not what, anyone wanted. And of course, I know a lot of people say, oh, well, they vote Democrat. That's what they get. But that's kind of why I decided to kind of stand up and say, this is insanity. This is enough. We are not going to just be following the Democratic Party off of a cliff. 'Cause, quite frankly, that's what it felt like doing. So that's kind of when I really stood up. And another thing, too, it's not just the inner cities dealing with the migrant situation. It's the people, the liberal types who live downtown and they're very condescending. They're like, all the black and brown people have to get along and hold hands and it's not a big deal. But they don't have to live next to these migrant shelters. The progressive types who are rich and live downtown, they're pro-immigrant as long as immigrants don't live next to them. So that's the irony. Yeah, that's the irony of it. So it's like, this isn't fair. If we have to accept it, why can't the rich people in the suburbs accept it?
Yeah.
It's not fair.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow. So the migrant crisis was really the big thing that kicked you off on this movement. And I mean, have you noticed a change? I know it's still early, but we keep talking about how fast things are changing in the Trump admin. I mean, I know that what the folks that are already there's probably not a lot that's been done yet, but have you noticed any change since Trump has been in Chicago, or is it still just too early to tell?
Absolutely. I mean, before Trump, there are areas in my neighborhood that look like Skid Row,
Mm-hmm.
10 after 10 after 10. And actually, on my YouTube channel, if anyone's interested, I actually did a video interviewing the migrants.
I saw that one.
English, so I had to interview them. Yeah, I interviewed them in Spanish, but you saw how that was a block by the police station. A normal block. I've been walking around that area for a very long time. And now it looks like Skid Row, 10 after 10 after 10. Kids running around. There were actually parts of that area I couldn't even film because kids didn't even have clothes on. And it's like, this is, people coming from third world countries just being dumped into the community. But to answer your question, all of these people who've been hanging around and loitering and begging and doing all kinds of stuff. They are nowhere to be found. They are hiding out. It's like a ghost town in certain parts. Like they really are hiding. I'm like, wow, that's crazy. So we see a little bit of an impact already. This is just, Trump hasn't even been in office for a month yet. So
Yeah. I've seen the videos. I don't know if you've seen them or not, but there's warehouses and, factory facilities and all this that ICE raids are starting to become a really big thing. I think these were it might have been in New York. I forget where it was, but the guys were walking around with cell phones saying, look, we just heard about ICE coming, and they hold up the cell phone and the place is empty. I mean, the amount, I think we've underestimated the amount of illegal immigration that's impacted the job market, the available jobs for Americans. And these are monstrous facilities. And I don't know if they were Amazon or where these things were, but guys are filming it saying they heard that ICE was in the neighborhood and they just ghosted. Like everybody's running for the hills. So I don't know. I'd be interested if you were to go. Maybe this is something you could do sometime, but go around and see if you're seeing an influx of people voluntarily leaving, because I think we've seen a lot of that too. I don't know if you've seen any of that yet, but folks self-deporting basically.
that would be amazing. That way, Tom Homan doesn't have to round anyone up, or you avoid all that controversy. They can just leave themselves. And I think that's actually what they should do.
Yeah.
Save their family the trauma. Just deport yourself.
Well, and I've heard that they're doing it because if they actually go into custody, if illegal immigrants go into custody, there's now a paper trail, a record. We used to do it in the military. We would collect biometric data, and it's very easy to do. And once they have that biometric data, if you're found later on, now you're a double offender. And if you are busted by the Trump administration, the penalties are more severe. So they're like, all right, well, I'll just go back now and not risk getting caught so that I can try to sneak back in later on. But I don't know. So let me ask you this: if to flip Chicago with, and I guess you could you'd speak on behalf. I don't know if you can speak on behalf of Chicago Red as an organization, but what are some of I guess what's the long-term plan? Short-term and long-term, because we've got, I know, are you all impacted by the midterms coming up in 2027 or 6?
Yeah, we definitely do want to be involved in that because it's very important. And I am actually the executive director of Chicago Red. At first,
Okay,
I was just a
perfect.
normal kind of member. Yeah, at first I was a normal kind of member, just kind of going and getting people registered to vote and stuff like that. But then that position opens up, and I've been with the organization for a while, so I was like, hey, why not? But with the midterms, with the election, the next election after Trump leaves, we are focused on all of that because the groundwork starts now. And I think one of my biggest fears is people getting a little too comfortable. Like,
Mm,
okay, Trump won, and we have J.D. Vance, and we have Elon Musk, so he's gonna fix everything and we can kind of sit back and relax. And I'm thinking, no, we have to get more people involved in politics, more people educated on what's actually going on. So one of the biggest tenets of Chicago Red is civic engagement and also patriotic esteem. So civic engagement, letting people know, asking them, do you know who your alderman is? Do
mm,
you know who represents you? Do you know what is happening in Chicago? Do you know what's happening in the state of Illinois? Getting people educated on that front. And obviously, patriotic esteem. Don't let people tell you that you have to hate America or that America is some vicious, racist country, because that is liberal, left wing insanity. You are an American and you have every right to love this country. So we definitely are focused on the midterms. We're focused on trying to get on the news, get our word out there, and really speak to Republicans. Like, do not overlook Chicago. A lot of people in this city are thirsty for change. You just have to talk to us.
yeah. That's really cool. So, and I guess it's part of it too, personalities. So I know you're familiar with Scott Pressler and what he's done in Pennsylvania. He's been, unbelievable. Is that is that kind of a thing that you guys are going to be looking at in, the coming years, having your version of a Scott Pressler, getting people registered that maybe aren't registered to vote, and kind of hitting it from that end as well?
Yeah, we want to get more personalities out there to get people engaged because when they see us, like, obviously there are older people in our organization, but I'm a younger person. There are other young people, and they're like, man, that's really fun. That's something that I can get into. And just getting more personalities out there to encourage people because we see the kind of same stereotypical kind of Republicans, you have to look like this, you talk like this, and
Mm-hmm.
not to be offensive, but Republicans don't really have much appeal, or in the past, they didn't have much appeal to inner city voters until Donald Trump came along. And people are like, that's the guy who set your fire. That's the guy who would jump on. And he would talk to rappers and talk to this black celebrity and that black celebrity. So, and he dated a black woman way in the past. So people kind of are more familiar with, Trump. So having like a Scott Pressler, but in Illinois, absolutely. That's kind of why we're trying to grow our organization and to speak with more people, to have more personalities. Because I can't be the only one, going to City Hall or on Fox News. We want a lot of other people with a lot of different flavors to bring to the table. So
Yeah, yeah. He really did cross a lot of very interesting cultural barriers. Donald Trump did. I mean, he's such a unique political entity. And I actually didn't vote for him the first time. I've always been a conservative guy, but
oh
I
wow.
was very much opposed to Donald Trump at the beginning. I was freshly out of the military, or freshly off of active duty, and I'll say I was still institutionalized, because you do become institutionalized to a certain degree when you're in the military. You have a little more faith in the bureaucracy. And as I've been out and living in the real world, what I call the real world, I am far less institutionalized. And I realize, the fraud, waste, and abuse, and the bloated government machine, while I was in it, which the DOD is very much a bloated machine. But I mean, my perspective has just changed. So I was a Ted Cruz guy the first time around, is who I was really supporting, and I was vehemently anti-Trump. I was like, this guy is, I didn't like his delivery. I didn't like any of that stuff, because I was still in that neat bubble of, I want my George W. Bush Republicans, where everybody's, and it wasn't until I got out and really started getting deep into politics and researching it that I realized, boy, that was one of the worst things for the country, and that we got to get away from the status quo, and Trump, he ain't the status quo, that's for sure. He's definitely not the status quo.
And that's the crazy thing, is that in 2016, you had Trump on the one hand, who was kind of like this disruptor or
Mhm.
challenging the status quo. And then you had Bernie Sanders on the left side of the aisle. And a lot of people speculate that if Bernie Sanders had won, or if Democrats put faith in Bernie Sanders, he probably would have been president, he would have been reelected, and we would have been on a much different track. So I think in 2016 was a very pivotal moment. Either the country was going to go left wing populist or right wing populist. And that's what we saw with Donald Trump. Is going right wing populist. So
Yeah,
2016 was a very important year for sure.
yeah, it really was. The populist movement it's very interesting, because I've watched recently, I don't know if you've seen it or not, is it Uyghur? Cenk Uyghur, the guy from the Young Turks.
Thank you, Young Turks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's been really he's always said he's a populist, that sort of thing, and he's really latched himself on to kind of dovetailing off of Trump's movement. And he was at Charlie Kirk's event, not too long ago, so it's kind of like he's cozying up to it. I don't exactly know. Left wing populism is different. It's a different animal. It's a different machine. I'm definitely not a Bernie guy. I mean, he's far too Marxist for me. I don't fall into that thing. But he got hosed by the Democrat Party, that's for sure. I think he was like 46% support among Democrats, Bernie was. But anyway, so
Yeah, that's crazy.
yeah. So I know I sent this. I don't know if you got to look at it or not, but Trump, and I'll pull up the headline first, but he pardoned. Okay, how do you say this guy's name? Blagojevich?
Blagojevich.
Blagojevich. That's it.
Blagojevich.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Trump pardoned the guy, and I guess he commuted his sentence during the last one. It was for political corruption and all that. And now he made this post with Roger Stone, and it said, clearing the way for a Blagojevich bid for mayor of Chicago. And I don't know. Do you know much about this guy? I really don't. I don't know a whole lot about him, but he seems like, and with him
I
being,
know.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, what were you about to say?
Well, I was going to say that when I hear him now, because he was on like Joe Rogan's podcast, and he has seen some of his stuff on social media, he sounds kind of like an Eric Adams sort of Democrat. And I don't know if that's your take on him, but what do you think the people of Chicago would think about a Blagojevich, if he were to take up the mayoral, yeah, I'm going to mess up that name.
Um, it's kind of a tricky situation because I've been so used to Chicago being like this crazy left wing like city. But even with, the election of Trump, the Democrats only won the state of Illinois by around 250,000 votes. Like we took a lot of votes
Wow.
away from the Democrat Party. And Chicago Red, we take full credit for that. We've had Trump rallies on the South Side, the West Side, all that good stuff. But with Blagojevich, he is trying to sound a little bit more like, I guess, like you said, a moderate conservative. I saw him on Joe Rogan, and I was really impressed. Like, wow, this is a Democrat talking about corruption, and he was using profanity, but in a good way, and trying to appeal to those people like Trump appeals to people. So I think a lot of people, with the election of Trump, their minds are kind of turning. So if anyone wanted to make their pitch and try to be a Republican or a conservative Democrat, now would be the time. We have Tulsi Gabbard, who was a Democrat, yelled at Kamala, busted her out, and now she's in Trump's cabinet. It's like, if Tulsi Gabbard can make that insane transformation from left to right, I think anyone can. And I know technically a Democrat conservative or moderate Democrat is still a Democrat, but I'll take anyone that isn't crazy far left. So I don't know too much about all that stuff, but I know that, we should be a little bit open-minded to anything that is not Mayor Brandon Johnson.
Right. Yeah.
Like Mayor Brandon Johnson is not the answer at all.
Right.
So I'm open to it. I'm listening.
Yeah. Well, and I've read a little bit about it. So it was political corruption. He apparently sold Barack Obama's Senate seat, is what he was accused of, and several other things. But it was like a 16-year prison sentence or something crazy, and it got commuted, and now he's been pardoned. And I guess he's going to be making the rounds on social media to try to get his hat back in the ring. I don't know if he actually will or not, but I think that, and we'll talk about him here in a little while, but Eric Adams is somebody who has, I guess, I don't want to say sweetened on Republicans and a lot of folks, but it's somebody who just has a vested interest in actually changing the politics of the city. And I put it in the notes here, but I was looking back at Chicago politics, and it's a dicey world, Chicago politics is. And going back to, obviously, you can go back 100 years to Capone and all the organized crime. And then in 2019, the University of Illinois at Chicago actually did a study and said that Chicago is the most corrupt city in the country. And that's a lot of things to overcome. And that's the kind of stuff that you guys are really going to be fighting against, is this very powerful, potent political machine, the same one that got, Obama elected and got him into the limelight and all that stuff. So I don't know. Have you experienced any of that? Like Chicago Red experienced the pushback from the political machine?
That's a really good question. So far, of course, we get a lot of hate. We get a lot of, people saying crazy things and stuff like that, but not like crazy pushback to where we can't do what we want to do. Like we've been to the RNC, and that's actually where we met Blagojevich. We spoke with him. It was really fun. So that's another reason why I'm kind of open to Blagojevich, because I'm like, this is a Democrat. He's at the RNC. He's speaking to conservatives. So if his mind is changing, or if he's believing the things that we believe, then I think people should be open to that. But yeah, we do what we want to do. We show up in places we're not supposed to show up to. We were outside of Mayor Brandon Johnson's house, and we had a press conference last year.
Oh, wow.
And when I first joined the organization, it was so much fun. I had like a bright red blazer. We were wearing red, and people literally were coming out of their buildings to report, and they were giving us encouragement, like, yes, this migrant crisis is out of control, because even the local people, while they may not be Republican, they do agree with some things Republicans believe. So we've been everywhere. We've been on the news. I've been on Jubilee. So we haven't been able to not do anything because of pushback, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, we do whatever we want to do, and we leave it in God's hands. We're very religious people. We meet at a church, actually, and we pray to God every single time we meet. So
that's
let
awesome.
God and let go is what I believe.
That is so awesome. That's so awesome. I love that.
But the haters are definitely out there.
But, goodness, I can only imagine. Sorry, I just gave me I was going to pull up this speech, and it pulled up my YouTube. Yes, the haters are out there. I could definitely attest to that. I've seen. I mean, I don't see it. That's the thing. This is why I really like doing YouTube, because I can engage with folks that are in areas like you're in. I'm in such a deep red part of the country. It's just conservative, very, very, very conservative. We're right here in the Bible Belt, and that sort of thing. So I'm fascinated by what you all are having to deal with in these blue states. And I've been friends with them. I've lived in blue states. I lived out in Hawaii for a while, but out in Honolulu. But anyway, yeah, I'm fascinated by it. So I'm going to skip around let's hit a couple of headlines. So I was going to play this RFK Jr. speech, but I pulled up the wrong one, so I may have to edit this one. I'll skip to that one last. Let's talk about Eric Adams. I don't know if you've been keeping up with a whole lot of what he's got going on, but AOC recently called for for Kathy Hochul to remove him from his position. And this is like it's like a tangled web, man, because okay, I'm going to read some of this. This is from the Post Millennial, and it says Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has called for Mayor Eric Adams to be removed from office, suggesting that New York Governor Kathy Hochul should take action to remove him, following news that the Department of Justice is dismissing its case against the mayor. On Thursday, Ocasio-Cortez posted on Blue Sky. Oh boy, that's a really great platform, I'm sure. Could you imagine could you imagine the static that goes on whatever, Blue Sky? Good gracious. So she said Adams must
Lord knows.
Oh gosh, yeah. Adams must be removed. The city cannot sustain being governed for nearly a year by a mayor who is being coerced by Trump's administration in order to escape charges. This corruption poses a real threat to the people of the city. He should have resigned a while ago, but will not. So it's time for him to go. And basically what they're saying is, all right, in exchange for having his charges dropped, he has agreed to go along with the Trump administration's immigration plan. It's so much silly deflection. And this is what bugs me is whoever for you guys, and that's why I think about folks in Chicago, because the two that everybody looks at, we look at Chicago, we look at New York, what's happening in those two places, because they're some of the deepest blue cities in our country. And here, this guy, Eric Adams, has been, while a Democrat, like we were talking about with Blagojevich, while a Democrat, a lot of his stuff, especially on immigration, tends to side more with Republicans than anybody else. But this is how they're attacking him, and it's just, it's so backhanded. I don't know. But they're dealing with, I think the number is around 650,000. I was Googling the numbers, and the total number of undocumented immigrants in New York is almost 750,000, which is gargantuan. And that's in New York and all of its boroughs, I guess, and everything. But this, I mean, it speaks to what you guys are dealing with. Because I think what's the number that you all have in Chicago?
We had close to 1 million. So it's probably gone up, but last time I checked, it was like over 500,000, but that was a while back. But I think that went up to probably closer to 1 million. But initially, it was 500,000 people just dumped into the city, and then a couple of thousand a week after that.
Wow. Well, so Adams, and I didn't pull up the video on this, but Adams he sat down with Tom Homan. I don't know if you saw this on Fox News. Did you catch that?
On Fox and Friends.
Yeah.
I saw the entire video. They were kind of like, they were really cordial with each other. Then at the end, they were like, well, Eric Adams, you believe in sanctuary cities. Tom Homan doesn't believe that, so he can come after you. But after, to respond to what you were bringing up, I think it's a little silly because even before those charges were brought, he was complaining about the number of illegals New York was getting. He was saying the Biden administration is not helping us. The Biden administration, this is not a sustainable situation. These people can't just stay in hotels and live off the street forever. So he's been complaining about that way before the charges were dropped. And if he were like gun-ho with the immigration stuff and then all of a sudden switched, I could understand why she would say that. But I think it's just a way for Democrats just to deflect and to ignore the fact that 56% of the American people agree with deportations.
Yeah.
The majority of this country is for the removal of illegal aliens. The Democrats, they want to distract from the popular message, the fact that 70% of Americans think that Trump is following through with his agenda. They want to distract from those numbers and have all the attention on Eric Adams and some sort of strange quid pro quo relationship he may have with Trump. So the D in Democrat, in my opinion, stands for distraction. That's all that they do. They try to blindside you and, focus on things that don't even matter. Most people want these illegals out. They need to get over it. The American people have spoken.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I've always been a proponent. I mean, I personally am a proponent of legal immigration, but the number has to be, we always talk about how it takes too long. It's a difficult process. And I personally don't think that's a bad thing. That people have, when they spend several years trying to get into America, they have a lot of buy-in and they have to put in the effort. If it's like anything, when you give somebody, when like whether it's giving out money or you give out something else, people don't value it when they didn't have the struggle and the difficulty to get it, right? It's like a lottery winner, right? You win the lottery and people go broke. Most lottery winners go broke in a very short period of time because they don't appreciate the money that just came to them in the snap of a finger. And when it's immigration, yeah, you spend several years and you're like, I really, really want to do this. You go through the bureaucracy, you go through the difficulty, and then you become an American citizen and you assimilate and you understand our civics and our Constitution and all the things that make us great. So I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I don't know your thoughts on that.
Absolutely. I don't understand why liberals just want to let a bunch of people in willy-nilly and say, the process should be made easier. I think that it's supposed to be hard, because in that case, the entire world can just come to America, sign up. This is when you come here. The entire world has issues with poverty. And another thing I want to say is that America needs a little me time. We are not we're not a battered woman shelter. We're not a homeless encampment. We need to focus on our own people. And this idea that we have like this obligation to accept any and everyone who needs help around the world is insane. Look to Canada, look to European countries, look to other places. But America needs a little break. We've been taking these people since the 60s, like nonstop. A lot of people who come illegally. So no, the process should not be extremely easy. It should be challenging because if you put in the work, if you wait, if you have the money to actually make it happen, then I'm serious. And I know that you're serious about becoming an American citizen.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it. America needs some me time. Yeah. I mean, I
did a little vacation.
Yeah, a little vacation from it. I did
a little vacation.
I did a video. I don't remember how long ago it was. It was about a small town in Middle America, and it was a town of, tens of thousands of people, and it had tens of thousands of illegal immigrants dropped off in there, and it was overwhelming all of the resources of it. So,
Yikes.
yeah, that's a bad deal. All right, I'm gonna switch from New York. Sorry to be bouncing around here, but let's go to some of the changes that we've seen with the Trump admin and the disruption and all that good stuff. This is a fantastic. It's a segment from RFK Jr.'s speech. I don't know your thoughts on RFK Jr., but we'll talk about it here in a minute. Let me play this video real quick.
20 years, I've gotten up every morning on my knees and prayed that God would put me in a position where I can end the childhood chronic disease epidemic in this country. On August 23rd of last year, God sent me President Trump, and he gave me he's now given me, he's kept every promise that he's made to me. He's kept his word in every account and gone way beyond it. I'm so grateful to you, Mr. President. A lot of people told me that I couldn't trust President Trump. I better get it in writing. And we did a handshake, and everything that he told me he was going to do, he has done. And I'm so grateful to him. And I've told you before, I genuinely believe that you are a pivotal historical figure, and you are going to transform this country at a time when we see all of the indicia of democracy now in tatters in our country. We see the rise of the military-industrial complex, the rise of totalitarianism, these attacks on our Constitution, and this breathtaking epidemic that is disabling our people. President Trump has promised to restore the American dream in this country. A healthy person has 1,000 dreams. A sick person only has one. 60% of our population has only one dream, that they get better. President Trump has promised that he's going to restore America's strength. But we can't be a strong nation if we have a weak citizenry. If people are sick, 60% of our people are sick, 77%, as President Trump mentioned, of our children cannot qualify for military service. And we need a man on a white horse now. We need somebody who is willing to come in and has the spine and the guts and the strength to challenge orthodoxies, to stand in the way of vested interests, and to break institutions that have turned against our democracy. President Trump has shown again and again that he is that hero. And most recently, I greatly appreciate it, and I called you the day that you announced the termination of USAID. My uncle started USAID in 1961 for humanitarian purposes, to put our country on the side of the poor. It has been captured by the military-industrial complex. It has become a sinister propagator of totalitarianism and war across the globe. And very few people understand how sinister this agency really is. And President Trump saw that, and he stood up to it with a masterstroke. And we want to do the same thing with the institutions that are stealing the health of our children. We need a revolutionary figure, and you are that figure, and I'm very grateful for you for giving me this opportunity. I want to recognize some of the allies that I've had in this battle for a long time.
Okay, I'm not going to play the rest of that. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, after all the stuff that happened last year, that you would see RFK Jr. speaking like this to President Donald Trump? I mean, I don't know. I don't know about you. I get motivated when I mean, it's such an interesting coalition, don't you think?
I mean, it's crazy to even think about. I have to blink twice to remind myself that this is actually real. Kind of like I said earlier with Tulsi Gabbard. Now you have RFK, who is fighting the good fight and saying, you know what, I'm going to join forces with Trump in order to push this agenda. And I think what's really interesting is that Democrats tend to forget that during the time of COVID, around 60% of Black youth in New York City was unvaccinated. A lot of people were very skeptical during that, whole situation. So for people to pretend that skepticism or wanting to be healthy or, that kind of thing is crazy or anything like that, I think it's uneducated. It's a really uneducated take because a lot of people are skeptical about health. A lot of people are skeptical about the things that we put in our bodies. And to completely dismiss those Americans as crazy conspiracy theorists is the reason why RFK has so much appeal. And I think a lot of people tend to forget that what attracts a lot of Americans to the right is that silencing of speech. It's that being called a conspiracy theorist. It's being pushed to the furthest corners of society. And when you have these figures like RFK or other right-wing people, pop up, that message is very appealing. So a lot of people see in RFK a person who, is fighting the good fight, a person who is saying the things that they probably can't say in their personal life because they'll be ostracized for it.
Yeah, that's a great point. That really is it's a huge difference between the left and the right, is that you can have, on the right, you can have multiple opinions. And in fact, there's a lot of ways that, if you and I sat down and had a 5-hour conversation, I'm 100% certain we would find places where we disagree. But that's just part of living in a society. And being able to do it, it's much easier to do it on the right. Varying points of view on the right are much more acceptable than they are on the left. It's like you say, it's the orthodoxy, it's the talking points. And this is what you have to believe in order to be accepted by our group, And yeah, it's really, I don't want to say it's absent because we have some people who are pretty vicious, can be on the right, but it's just so different. This is the new coalition that's really been built by Donald Trump and, the MAGA movement and the Maha movement and all that good stuff. It's quite refreshing, I think.
And I also want to add, what an incredible upgrade it was from like back in the day, Michelle Obama saying, oh, we're going to get kids healthy with the school lunch program and all this nonsense,
Yeah.
to the former person who was in that position under Biden. Now we have RFK, an upgrade from the Democrats who they put on a pedestal of these are the people who are going to make you healthy. And then we have RFK, who's an older man. He does push-ups, he does sit-ups, he's very fit, he's very healthy himself at his age. If that doesn't speak volumes, I don't know what else does.
Yeah, that's a great point. And and even his positions on a lot of this stuff, like vaccines and all that, he's not saying, they I think it was Mitch McConnell who said, I'm not going to vote for him because he doesn't support polio vaccines and all this. And even though during his testimony he said, no, I support these vaccines, but I want to make sure we have good science. And that's just not I just don't feel like that's a controversial stance. He talks about the vaccine schedule, and I'm not a scientist, I'm not a doctor, so I can't, profess to know one way or the other about it. But if somebody just comes and says, these are the shortfalls by the pharmaceutical companies, and we just want to fill those shortfalls with good science and research and testing, and that's it. Like, let the American people know the data and make their own decision. I just don't understand why it's controversial from the left. I mean, a lot of them are bought and paid for, I think, by the pharmaceutical companies. I know Elizabeth Warren is, and Bernie. Bernie took a
exactly. That's why she's so against him.
Yeah. Well, and Bernie
was so against him too. Exactly.
Yeah. He took like $1 million. They both took over $1 million from Big Pharma, but I don't know. I just think it is needed. I see it in my part of the country, and I'm sure you see it in yours. The Americans' health it's pretty abysmal. And my last job actually on active duty was as a recruiting commander. So I commanded a part in East Tennessee. I had a chunk of East Tennessee, and it was really hard to fill the slots we had because of, obesity and all that stuff. So, anyway.
And a lot of people, the sad thing too is like with the left trying to normalize these things. I don't know if you saw, it was like this lady whose suit lift because she couldn't fit in the car. And we're supposed to pretend that this is a completely normal,
right?
This is a completely normal thing to happen. It's complete insanity. And that's kind of why I guess, they push universal health care. We were talking about Bernie Sanders earlier, and it's the far left agenda, like, oh, universal health care. And that way everyone can be covered and stuff. But I'm like, why should me as a taxpayer be penalized for other people's bad health choices? Why can't we teach people the proper way to be healthy, the proper things to eat, and to really understand what we're putting in our body? And why say, okay, everyone gets a freebie? I think that's completely ridiculous. If you, smoke and you have a situation with your lungs, that's something that you brought on yourself, and you have to understand the side effects of that kind of thing. But to penalize somebody because you made bad choices, I don't think that makes much sense. So the left, they have the solution of just throwing money to people, or just, they want a quick fix. They want a Band-Aid on an open wound. But with the right, with the RFK, you see him really trying to get to the root cause of a lot of this stuff. And the fact that they're upset at us on the right for asking questions. What are y'all so afraid of? But with Doge, for example, we see the corruption and we see why they're afraid. They're trying to cover something for a reason. That's what I say.
Yeah, that's that. Great point. Great point. Now, I will say, and this is the next thing we'll talk about when we talk about Doge and all these cuts that we're seeing. I'm so glad it was the perfect segue, man. It was the perfect segue. I don't know if you've seen this or not. This is from WikiLeaks, but Washington, D.C. searches soar for Swiss bank, offshore bank, wire money, and IBAN. So this is basically,
oh wow, that's
people,
interesting.
Yeah, people in DC, and I've got several others. They're looking for these are DC's top searches. Let's see. So for wipe and erase. So this is what they're. And here's the other one. I think this might be the one. I didn't label them. So this one was for statute of limitations. So now that the DOJ is taken over by Trump folks, that you've got Kash Patel, who's probably going to be the FBI director. Everybody, these are the searches that WikiLeaks found in. So they're how to move money, how to delete information, and how to what the statute of limitations is for crimes. So this is the impact from the deep state now feeling threatened by Trump and all of his folks is enough to spike the Google search results in Washington, D.C. on these search terms. Is that not wild? I mean, what world are we
It's
living
kind of
in?
like it's kind of like when you watch true crime stories and then the police they find the criminal or the person who did the crime and they go through their phone and the search history is all about the crime. And it's like they have all these problematic things on their search history and how to delete evidence, how to permanently erase information off of your phone was a case I was watching, things that people look up. And it's the same with this. And I think that Republicans need to blast this all across social media. I know they're probably doing it right now, but they need to constantly remind people when they criticize Doge. This is what we are fighting. This is the corruption that we are fighting. What are these people so afraid of? It honestly is scary. The the lengths that they will go to protect the skeletons in their closet. That's what people really need to talk about. And it's just so annoying with the Democrats like protesting and trying to call, Elon like a Nazi and all this other crazy stuff. It's like I said earlier, it's a distraction from what actually matters.
Yeah, and I've seen people make the comparison that what was the one I had it on the tip of my tongue. So if people are stealing, like you find somebody robbing a house, and you're mad at the cop who comes to stop the guy who's robbing the house, that sort of thing. It makes it there's zero logical. There's no logic applied to it. It's a partisan knee jerk reaction to corruption. I mean, corruption sucks. I mean, nobody is supposed to like government corruption, but Trump has kind of like forced people into supporting it. I mean, this is the same thing with the IRS. Have you heard about this? That people are angry. They're basically forcing the Democrats to fight for the IRS and to say, no, don't shut it down. Don't audit the IRS. And no American out there, 80% of Americans probably would say, no, yeah, I think the IRS, the one who takes my money every month, should probably be audited.
Yeah.
But
don't have much sympathy for them.
No, not much at all. Okay, so let's see. The last one that we'll talk about. This is more stuff. This was from Zero Hedge. Zero Hedge eruption in BleachBit, wipe hard drive, and offshore bank searches in DC. I mean, good gracious. Oh wow.
They really are panicking.
They really are. But
I think it was like I think they also found that Ukraine was given hundreds of millions of dollars under Biden, and Vladimir Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, recently came out and he was like, a lot of this money I didn't even get. So now the Democrats, they're all scrambling like, oh no, what are we gonna do? And people are having that conversation. Where did this money go? We're just throwing money to Ukraine. We're throwing money to Taiwan and these other countries that Democrats love to prop up, and it's like a lot of these countries didn't even get all the money we sent them. So where did it go? And asking those tough questions really, that is what Democrats are afraid of. They are afraid of the skeletons that are in their closet. And like I said earlier, this is the kind of stuff that Republicans have to yell through a bullhorn. Look at them, look at what they're trying to hide, and look at the names they're calling us to distract you from what they really are. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what Elon Musk is going to do. I love Doge, and the corruption is going to be exposed. This is just a month, barely a month into Trump's presidency. Just imagine a year.
It's so
Just
wild.
imagine a year.
It's so wild. And I've said this to people privately that some folks that are kind of wary about Doge. I said, you know what? If Doge, and not just Doge, but the DOJ in general, if it's Kash Patel or Pam Bondi, whoever they nab in this money laundering, like you're talking about, 100 billion of the 177 billion that was supposed to go to Ukraine. Zelensky said, well, I didn't see all of that. Now, part of it, they say, isn't just in money, but part of it is going back into the military-industrial complex to buy the weapons that then go back over to Ukraine. But that's not everything, right? I mean, we don't know the percentages of that. There's a lot of missing money, but we saw the missing money in USAID. We've seen the missing money in, all the stuff that Doge is uncovering. And I think that for this to not look like an entirely partisan thing, some of the corrupt deep state or establishment Republicans are going to need to get nabbed as well. If it's just going after folks on the left, or if it looks like we're just going after folks on the left, even though the preponderance of it, I would bet, is there. I think that they're going to need to nab some folks on the right as well to make sure that this looks as, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think they need to be as fair and unbiased as they possibly can, because people are just tired of the corruption. And I think there's going to be people on the right and left that are going to fall. I don't know your thought on it.
I mean, I absolutely am not going to defend any rhino, any fake MAGA, any person like that who was involved in corruption. And absolutely, because we also have to hold our own side accountable. Because when we don't hold our own side accountable, that gives the left ammunition to say, see, they're partisan hacks, they're fake, and it's all quid pro quo. It's them not being honest about their intentions. But yeah, I'm not going to defend any crazy person on the right. That's not my goal at all. They gotta go if they're incorrect. If they're
Mine
incorrect.
neither. And I guess I should clarify is that it's if there appears to be any hesitancy, if things come out when we're finding the corruption, if there's any hesitancy, that's going to look bad on us. We are the party of law and order, and we don't mess around with that sort of thing. So we don't care if you're left or right. If you're part of the corruption and the money laundering from the American taxpayers, you need to be held accountable for it. And that's it. That's it. Okay.
That's it. That's all.
That's it. And then let's go over this last one. And this is Vivek Ramaswamy. I don't know if you heard about this. I guess he's going to kick off his Ohio gubernatorial campaign in February. So this is, again, from the post-millennial. Entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy will be kicking off his 2026 gubernatorial campaign for Ohio on February 24th, according to a new report from the Associated Press. Ramaswamy, is it Ramaswamy or Ramaswamy? I think I've always been saying Ramaswamy, but anyway,
Ramaswamy, yeah.
Yeah, he now wants to run for governor in his state of Ohio. President Donald Trump tapped him to head Doge with Elon Musk, but he resigned in January. I mean, this is a big deal. I think it was a debate between him trying to go for the governorship versus the Senate seat, or one of the Senate seats in Ohio. But I guess I would just ask you, first off, do you think that this split with Doge was simply because of this, or do you think there was bad blood between two alpha personalities between him and Elon Musk? I personally tend to think that it was the former, that it was because of this gubernatorial run. But the internet is spread with people saying, nah, he split with Doge simply because of the two of them locking horns. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one or not.
Vivek Ramaswamy, he's always said that he wasn't really interested in being Trump's vice president. A lot of people are like, okay, then what will you do if Trump's reelected? I think that he always wanted to have some kind of leadership position, and we can't have everybody in the same place. We can't have Elon and Trump and all of your favorite politicians all in one house. We have to have some people be governors, some people be the vice president, some people lead this and that. So I think this absolutely is a really good idea. And also, there was a lot of controversy about, I think, some things that Elon and Vivek said about the H-1B visa, like all of that situation. It didn't go really well on social media, and people are pointing to that as possibly a reason. But people, they're always going to try to find something. And that's why I always say that in fighting on the right, it happens. It's natural. We're conservatives. We talk and we understand the other side. But the bigger issue is the left. No matter what difference that Elon and Vivek have, no matter what is your position on H-1B visas, good or bad, no matter what we disagree on the right side of the aisle, we have to remember that the left is, in my personal opinion, satanic. The things that they push, boys can be girls and all this other nonsense. So we need someone like Vivek Ramaswamy. And I also love how he came out against Black Lives Matter. He had a really big business, back during the Black Lives Matter nonsense in 2020. He came out and he said, no, I'm not going to kneel. No, I'm not going to post a black square. No, I'm not going to have my company bend the knee to this organization. So seeing him in that capacity saying, I will not bend the knee to the woke nonsense. He even wrote a book, I think, on wokeness, which is a really big deal, and that really changed a lot of people's minds. So Vivek Ramaswamy, he's been a fighter, he's been a warrior for a long time now. And to see him hopefully be the governor would be an amazing thing, in my opinion.
Yeah. Now I want to know who the Republican governor of Illinois is going to be. That's the next one we need to figure out.
We shall see. We're gonna pray and cross our fingers. Hopefully, it'll be like Tom Homan. We'll never,
Oh
if
man,
that
that
were
would
possible, if that were possible. Now let
that would
Tom
be
Homan be the governor. I always
that'd be
jokingly say I wish Tom Homan was the mayor
yeah.
of Chicago. We wouldn't be in a crisis. If Tom Homan were the governor, Illinois wouldn't be in a deficit. We definitely would not have the money problems or the pension crisis. Illinois is leading in all of America in the pension crisis, and it's just complete insanity. The wasteful spending, the money that's just thrown to nowhere when you have Mayor Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker, the corruption that they're involved in. I hope we get a good Republican
Yeah.
governor, but we just have to see. We'll
I,
have to see.
I didn't even realize Tom Homan was a native Illinois guy. I didn't even know that.
That's what a lot of people when they say like, why is he here? I'm like, he's a native from here. That's why it's so
Wow.
funny. They're
Is
like,
he
he
a
has no business
Chicagoan?
in Illinois, and
Is he a Chicagoan or just a Illinois in general?
I think like in a smaller, I could be wrong, but maybe like a smaller city or smaller township, maybe
Yeah. Oh
in
wow.
Illinois. But I
Yeah.
know definitely he is a native.
That guy would be. Oh, he's such a bulldog. I really really like Tom Homan. He doesn't mince words. He doesn't pull any punches. He just goes after it, and yeah, that's awesome. Well,
And compare
yeah,
like Mayor Brandon Johnson trying to protect illegals and trying to say that if you're illegal, you have a right to be here. Even we had a vote in Chicago. They did not want to get rid of the illegal immigrants who commit crime. They wanted to amend Chicago's welcoming city ordinance, which means that they only would have went after the people who commit crime, not the abuelas, not the innocent women and children, only criminals. Should Chicago police work with ICE to deport only criminals? And Mayor Brandon Johnson said no. So even when you have the people who commit the crime, they don't want to get rid of those people. So to have Tom Homan just say, no, this is nonsense, they all got to go, afuera, out
yeah,
of here. It's so refreshing because living in Chicago is like living in a mental asylum. I'm telling you,
yeah.
people are crazy.
Wow, wow.
They're crazy.
I can't. I couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine. I'm a small town guy, and like I say, I've lived in big cities, but I don't know how you all deal with it. But Chicago is lucky to have you, Osiris, and your whole crew, and all your folks that are doing great things there. I like I say, I noticed you all last year. I'm so pleased when I see the areas that are going through what Chicago's going through, folks finally standing up for it and taking up for their city, taking up for their fellow citizens, and doing the right thing. And so I think it's really cool, and I'll definitely be following you and all of your crew and all your folks on social media and all that. Maybe you can come back on and tell me, what's going on down the road when you guys make some more progress. But I love talking with you, man. This was great. I'm so glad we finally got to do it. And your social media, where should everybody go to look for you on social media?
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I would love to come back on in the future. We're always doing more stuff, but my YouTube is My Crazy Opinions. For now, I may change my YouTube channel in the future, but for now, it's My Crazy Opinions. My Instagram is Osiris King, Osiris King Chicago. So My Crazy Opinions on YouTube, Osiris King Chicago on Instagram.
Awesome. I'll flash it up on the screen.
And we'll see where it goes with Chicago Red in the future. And Chicago Red, our website is just Chicago Red website. Just type it in chicagored.org and everything about us will pop up. So
that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for being on, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having me. So much fun.